And hello there, I'm Terry Brock, and thank you very much for joining us for this special virtual interactive presentation that we've got for you. We're interactively here with you and got a lot of information that we're going to share with you about presenting, designing your presentation, and putting that together. And to help us on that, we've got two wonderful people that will be joining us. One of them is joining us right across the country here. We're now in the UK, just outside London for Gina and me, and joining us up in the town of Wirral is a person who has trained many people through the years. He is known as a consummate professional in designing presentations, designing PowerPoint, video, audio, and helping them. And I just knew when I wanted to put this together, I wanted to work with this man. His name is Chris Davidson, and he joins us now via this wonderful interactive virtual presentation. Chris, thanks for being with us today.
Terry, good afternoon. Welcome to the United Kingdom, and a pleasure to be with you as well.
Yes, indeed. Well, it is great to have you here and to be able to talk with people and be able to do this through Google Plus Hangouts. We're now coming to you live and direct from the UK, and I know many people are joining us from registration from around the world, from Singapore, from the United States, from here in the United Kingdom, and worldwide operation. And so those of you that are watching this, I want you to kind of watch between the lines as you see what can be done and think about how you can do this as well. Before we get started on all that, also we want to be sure and bring in Gina Carr, who will be joining us in a little bit. I think she is going to be joining us, but until she joins us, Chris, tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, and introduce yourself to the folks at home, as they would say.
Well, I have a terribly guilty confession to make here, Terry. A little bit like you, I'm a reformed geek.
That's good.
Yeah. So this is a reformed geeky session we're having this afternoon. I'm an engineer, trained as an engineer up in the northwest of the United Kingdom here. For those people not from the United Kingdom, the nearest city to us would be we're sort of in a triangle around Manchester, Liverpool, and Chester. Those are the three closest cities. Liverpool would actually be the closest, I think. And I studied mechanical engineering at the University of Liverpool, and then I served for 20+ years in the high-tech industries, aviation, telecommunications, and IT, and set up Active Presence in 2002. Largely as a result of all of that time I spent in the corporate marketplace, frankly just being bored to tears by really dreadful presentations. So I set up Active Presence to right this wrong, and I've been doing it step by step, presentation by presentation, from that day through to this, really. So we met, I think, when you were in the NSA, of course, in the United States of America, long before I joined the Professional Speaking Association in the UK. But it is the PSA, NSA umbrella that has been responsible for bringing us together.
Yes, exactly, and we should let those that don't know what that is. The PSA, of course, Professional Speaking Association here in the United Kingdom, takes in Ireland and Scotland and England, United Kingdom, that area. And of course, NSA is over in the United States, the National Speakers Association, not the other NSA, which is the National Security Agency, which has come to be known very well these days. They're the ones that do the listening, and I'm sure they're listening to us now. So hello there, other NSA. We in the National Speakers Association, we're the ones that do the talking. So two different organizations there.
Yeah, and we do the talking and they do the listening.
Yeah, that's right. And also we have Gina Carr, who will be joining us in a little bit on some things, another engineer. And Gina, I see you're there right now. Tell us a little bit about who you are. Introduce yourself. So I've got two engineers with us now. Tell us about yourself, Gina.
Okay, well, Gina Carr.
Gina, we cannot hear you. We cannot hear you, Gina. We need to do a little more engineering on that sound.
Okay, how about now?
I think we're going to have to work on that sound a little bit.
All right. Well, if you can't hear me,
maybe do some engineering on that. Well, going back to Chris. Chris, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with presentations. We know that you've helped a number of people on that in many different areas. Tell us your background about that, please.
Well, that's a really quite interesting and there's a confluence of many interests there. And in fact, one would be relative to the message that Gina's just struggling with at the moment, whereby we could actually hear Gina right in the background there, but we weren't getting a very good signal. And that's one of the big problems that I note that many people have in terms of public speaking and giving presentations and the like, and that's getting their voice to the back of the room. So there are the three big issues, I think: getting your voice to the back of the room, being heard, if you are heard, being understood, and if you are heard and understood, do you make sense? Those are the three big issues, really.
Very important. Well, I think that's important. Well, let's go ahead and get into some of the material that we have. And by the way, those of you that are joining us now, we're using a tool called Webinar Jam, which works in conjunction with Google Plus Hangout. And that gives you the ability to chat with us, to send some information, to display some messages, and be able to do that. We're going to enable a chat box there, and I see we're having some comments from different people already. Thank you very much for everyone that's there. And we see that, Ian's up there in Scotland. We have someone from the big country of Plano, Texas. Marvin, glad to have you with us today out there. And we see several people: Suleiman here, Jeanette from Austin, Texas, Steve from Liverpool, John from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hey, John, I grew up near Napoleon, Michigan, not far from there. You might know where that is. Being from there, not far from Jackson. And Mark from Rockwell Collins, working from home today, which is in Wokingham. You're not too far from us here in Benfield today. And,
no, I know,
Moody,
I know, Mark. Terry, he's just down the road from you, young Mark. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, Mark, good to have you here today. And so, think about. I want you, those of you that are joining us, think about what we're doing here. We've got people joining us from countries around the world. Canada, I notice also. Colette, hello there. Nice to have you with us as well up there in Alberta. And what we're doing with Webinar Jam and with Google Plus Hangout, it's kind of like having our own television station. Except we're able to reach the entire world, not just a small geography, and we're able to get interaction. That's important. One of the things, Chris, I love what you say about that. I was calling these a virtual presentation, which is what they are. I like that much more than a webinar, which can be kind of boring at times. But I like your point of it being an interactive virtual presentation. That's important so that people can send us questions. We can look at that and be able to respond very easily. Chris, I just kind of like your observation as a person who has for literally decades worked in presentations. Talk about what you see so far. This is one of your first experiences with Google Plus Hangout. What your thoughts are?
Well, my thoughts are several, really, and they're thoughts that come from two camps. They come from the presentation camp and they come from the engineering camp. Because if I think back to when I started in computing, and it's difficult for youngsters to believe this, and I say youngsters with a wry smile because, as you know, I have some people who work with me, and Dan is in the office today just sitting on a desk off to one side. You can't actually see him, but I think I started in the IT industry before Dan was born, and the plain simple fact of the matter is that personal computers had not been invented. Mobile phones were a complete figment of the imagination. There was no internet. There was no World Wide Web. Any telecommunications was dominated by IBM's SNA architecture. There was no other generic architecture for telecommunications at all. And yet here we are, being able to have a conversation between three of us specialists in the whole area of communications, and we could be anywhere in the world. It just so happens that you and Gina are over in the United Kingdom at the moment, but you could have been at your home in Florida. And I have friends and colleagues like Mark down in Wokingham and Steve in Liverpool who are able to dial into this conversation. I mean, the technicalities of that alone, within a relatively short period of time, sort of 20 years or something like that, I think is absolutely astounding. And yes. I remember video conferences when I was working at IBM's research laboratory in the south of France back in 1990, early 1990s, 1991, say, and the video conference suites then were massively expensive, and the video signals were really pretty poor, pretty grainy, not much better than we were getting from when NASA put man on the moon in 1969. So this is just a leap forward. It really is. It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And so that's why I'm excited about being able to do this and to be able to bring you in and get this happening. Gina, let's do a check again. Are we getting audio from you? Gina, are you there with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through now. Chris, how's her audio coming through for you?
Loud and clear. We have Gina Carr on air.
Excellent. Well, delighted to have you, Gina. So we're going to turn it over to you. You might want to adjust your screen a little bit there as we move that. But please tell us about yourself. Another engineer joining us. Tell us about yourself, Gina, and your experience in presenting and what you do.
Okay, well, I don't get often asked about my engineering background because it was my undergraduate degree from Georgia Tech in industrial engineering. Seemed like 100 years ago. It was actually 30 years ago, 1984. So I do have that background in engineering, which serves me well in a number of ways. And then I have an MBA from Harvard, and I speak about marketing, especially digital marketing. And more specifically, I help people a lot with social media and getting their books to market, getting speakers to market, helping businesses get more visibility and get found online. So happy to be here today, and I'm eager to learn more about how to make a better presentation.
Excellent. Well, we're going to cover a lot today, so I want to get into some of the meat of the matter as we go through this and make sure we kind of walk around the table. Now, those of you that are joining us, Gina and I are here in the UK right now. We're in the same building, actually just different locations on that, and Chris is joining us again over from Wirral, which is on the northwest section of England. Matter of fact, Chris, before we go too much farther, I can't let you get away without, if it's comfortable for you, have you show us a little bit of view of what you have outside the window. He was showing you this as we were putting things together, and I think, how cool is it to be able to see out the window what he sees? Chris, I'm going to let you tell us what you have out there.
Okay, well, Terry, we picked the 20th of May because, of course, that was when you were going to be over in the United Kingdom. But the other reason we picked the 20th of May for this broadcast is that we cunningly checked the tide table, and at 1600 hours, which is about where we are now, actually just 10 past that, is high water. So outside of my window, we have, to all intents and purposes, the other side of the Atlantic Ocean from you in Florida, if you were at home. So let's twizzle the camera around and see what we can show you.
Camera about to be twizzled. I like that. That must be a good British word. Twizzled. And we're twizzling. Oh, I feel the tingling up and down my spine. And there, ladies and gentlemen, we have, you can see a little bit there. When I quiet down, you'll be able to see here. I'm going to just bring it up there. There it is. You can see the Atlantic Ocean. Chris, tell us what we're looking at right now.
Okay, so you are looking out of the office window out towards as I say, to all intents and purposes, the Atlantic Ocean. Now, you can see there that there is land on the other side, and that's not America, of course.
Oh, it's not. I thought you were really
So we're looking at on an estuary, and that is the estuary of the River Dee. And to one side of the estuary goes inland towards the city of Chester, and the other side of the estuary opens up into the Irish Sea. So the next bit of land there would be Ireland, and then on the other side of Ireland you're into the true Atlantic Ocean and away to your homeland of America.
Yes, indeed. That is most impressive, and we're getting some great comments here on the chat section from Libby Easton there, and she's looking at the Gulf of Mexico right now, and that's good. Colette Close, good to see you. Good to have you with us, joining us there, I would assume from Alberta up in Canada. And you don't have a whole lot of oceans there, but you do have some beautiful scenery. So we're looking live and direct right now at the Atlantic Ocean. All right, well, so much for that. I think it's great. Chris, we'll let you twizzle. Is that the word, the British word, twizzle that around?
That's twizzle, yeah.
Yeah, there we are. We're twizzling that around. I think we see a good view of your tie right now and your belly. There we go. It looks delightful. Okay, well, this is good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can see we're kind of excited. And excuse us a little bit. We're kind of geeky. So it is nice to be able to say, look, the Atlantic Ocean. We can see that. But let's get down into the essence of what we're talking about today, presenting. Because one of the things that's most important today is you being able to present. And there's different ways to do it. One of the reasons I wanted to bring in Chris is because Chris really knows presentations. He stands up and speaks in front of a group using verbal communication, and he does it very, very well. He's one of the top-rated speakers in the UK, a member of the Professional Speaking Association. But in addition to that, Chris also, like me, has worked with technology a lot, with PowerPoint, with video, has seen ups and downs, when things work, when they don't work. And when they don't work, it's frustrating, but we do that. So that's why I wanted to have Chris join us to talk about, I guess Chris, if it's all right with you, start from the big picture, tell us about presentation, why it's important, and then some of the other areas as we kind of interact back and forth, more than just a monologue presentation. This will be an iteration going back and forth, and Gina, be able to have your input on there as well. Gina, we'll just make sure that you're still with us, audio working well, everything okay on your end?
I'm still here.
Excellent, good. Well, we're glad to have you here. Chris, I'll turn it over to you by asking some questions about the importance of presentations, why this is important, and why we need to be aware of it from a big picture point of view for both verbal communication, standing, say, on a stump in a forest, as well as using technology. Talk to us about that, Chris.
Okay, well, the big picture point of view is pretty simple, really, and that is that whenever we speak or communicate in the most general sense, maybe write a letter or a telex or an email, the essential point is that the essence of what we want to communicate, the message, whatever that message is, we want that message to be remembered, and we want somebody to take action about it. Otherwise, really, there's little point in making that communication. So the essence of it is, can we communicate in such a way that we are communicating a message that is remembered and likely to lead to action? And this is really absolutely critical, of course, in business. So if we're then thinking about, well, okay, how do we get a message across that is going to be remembered? The only way of getting a message remembered is getting it into somebody's long-term memory. I think we can all kind of intuitively acknowledge that. So to get a message into long-term memory, we have to get the message processed by the bit of the brain before long-term memory, and that is called working memory. And the very simple point there is that the more information that we give working memory in a way that is structured neatly for consumption, the better the message is going to be processed and remembered. That's what it comes down to. That's the whole essence of presentation techniques, is to deliver information in such a way that the brain can easily process it and put it into long-term memory. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, Chris, I like the way you say that, because whether we're using the traditional way of presenting, using our voice only, or if we're using communication and technology like we're using here, those principles are still the same.
Yeah.
The basic principles of connecting with people are there. Now, we have some advantages when we're using technology, because right now, as those of you that are watching this, you see the image change. That grabs our brain's attention. We say, oh, there's a different person here. Oh, there's a different thing here. Or we could do slides, be able to share a screen and then go through, for instance, a PowerPoint or Keynote presentation with slides going back and forth. We could jump over to various websites to say, see what's happening here. And I think the idea of what you just did, Chris, even though it's kind of a little thing, I think it's a big thing. The fact that we can say, take your camera, move it over here. We're looking out the window, looking right at the Atlantic Ocean, which is kind of nice. We see that, we know, hey, he said he's on the Atlantic, and yeah, he really is. We can see it, and we know we can do a couple of quick keystrokes and check and find out what the weather is like and what the tide is like, etc. And sure enough, what you're showing us backs that up. So I think those are important. How do those particularly work, Chris, when we're talking about the age of using PowerPoint and Google Plus Hangout, Skype, and technology? How do those principles of communication and the way the brain works apply in that realm?
Well, really, they do really well is the answer. And the way that would help us communicate better with technology, I think, is if those of us that were old enough to remember when we were at school and there was the idea of chalk and talk, as they say, the old school teachers with chalkboards, And if we think back and remember the very best teachers that we ever had at school, they would probably use colored chalk, not just white chalk on a green or a blackboard. They would probably use colored chalk, and unconsciously what they were doing, and we might not have realized it as students at the time, but unconsciously what they were doing is that when they were drawing on the chalkboard with their colored chalks, they would unconsciously be drawing at the same time and in complete synchronization with what they were saying. And I tell you what, they didn't write bullet points on the chalkboard.
Yes, don't do a lot of bullet points, but we see that the bullet points have their place, and I think that's a good point. I know in some places in TED Talks they don't either allow or recommend the bullet points. Tell us why that is. It seems like bullet points are a good way to grab our attention, and there's a place for it, but there's also a place where we don't want to use it. Tell us your thoughts on that, Chris.
Yeah, it all comes back to working memory. It's very, very simple. So the senses, in presentations, we're largely dealing with sound and sight. So let's put to one side the other senses for the moment, and let's deal with just sight and sound. So sight and sound being processed during a presentation. So the eyes take in whatever the eyes see, and visual memory is responsible for processing that signal. The ears take in whatever the ears hear, and there's an auditory part of the brain that processes that signal, and you then end up with two images being created. You end up with a visual pattern of what the eyes see, and you end up with an auditory pattern of what the ears hear. And working memory is then responsible for resolving those two patterns. Now, that will work really well if those patterns are created to fit together precisely. So in other words, if I show you a picture and at the same time I am saying words that describe what that picture is, that will help those two patterns unite to produce a single complete pattern that the brain can then process. But if you are trying to read words on a screen at the same time as listen to me speaking other words, your brain can't do both things at once. And fundamentally, that comes down to why bullet points are a bad idea.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think that's very important, Chris. It's like if I'm saying, you know, do ABC, but yet my voice, you see that as a bullet point, but my voice is saying, let me tell you about my trip over to the ocean this last weekend. Your brain is confused because it's seeing two. But what if instead I say, the first important point is make contact with your audience, and those words appear. As I've said, it's kind of reinforcing. Could that be a place where it would be good if it's used to reinforce?
A better way of doing that would be to say this. The first most important thing to do is this, and when you say the word this, you click a button and the words make contact with the audience, appear on the screen. You give the audience time to read the words, make contact with the audience on the screen. You then re-engage the audience and say, the best way of making contact with the audience is to blah, 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 something else.
So you're using that and tying that in. I know one of the things I do often, many of you that are watching this have seen videos I produce where I'll make a point. I'll say there's 5 points that you need to be aware of with such and such. And as I say them, immediately after I've said them, I have the text appear on the screen reinforcing it. Much like, for instance, and I'm going to give a little inside tips here. You'll notice the lower third that I have here with @Terry Brock and have terrybrock.com. We're using that. And by the way, the inside secret is, for some funny reason, we can't get that on Chris's screen, and it's driving us both nuts. But I'm just sure, the way that it is. We don't know why. It worked in practice, and we'd say that, by the way, to say, we want you to keep trying. Sometimes with technology, certain things don't work, and that's okay. I remember, Chris, I think I told you this when I was working with Oprah, not with Oprah Winfrey, but with Skype, and they were working with Oprah Winfrey. I was working with some of the top people, and they told me that occasionally, sometimes, things wouldn't quite work right. And you think about it, here they've got Oprah Winfrey and her staff, brilliant, consummate professionals. Skype, their staff, and consummate engineers and professionals, and sometimes it didn't work. It's just the way things are on this planet. So we kind of roll with the punches on that. Chris, have you seen that happen every now and then?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And you know, and when things when technology packs up, I mean, the answer is you just carry on without it, because none of this stuff should cause any massive problems here and there. You know, you just keep going without it, don't you? Yeah, it's the way it
Yeah,
is.
I think that's a very good point because, and though I'm saying this to fellow geeks and nerds out there, sometimes when they don't work, that's the thing that we're focusing on. Our brain is focused on this little thing here isn't working, but your audience usually isn't going to notice that in most cases. Now, if they do, you want to address it, but don't let it bother you. Keep going no matter what. Kind of roll with the punches. Chris, would you agree with me on that one?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. A funny little story for our people joining us today, Terry. I remember the chorus I used to sing with. I used to sing with a very, very good chorus in the United Kingdom, one of the top choruses in the country. And we had a gig one day, and the chorus director forgot his bow tie. We all used to have our uniforms and what have you, and he just forgot to bring his bow tie with him, and we didn't have a spare one and what have you. And in the warm-up room, we were getting ready to go on stage, and he said, "Now look, guys, I want you to remember, if we do a really good job here and we sing really well, then you know what? The audience won't even notice that you're all wearing ties." So in other words, the whole concept of him forgetting his tie was completely irrelevant. It's just, you know, there you go. Doesn't matter.
I think that's a good point. Yeah, to make sure that we don't worry about it. I know that Paul McKinley, Mike McKinley's father. Mike McKinley is a great speaker, a good buddy of mine, and his father Paul would often say, "Don't worry about it. They don't know your script, and if
Correct.
they don't know your script, then you don't have to worry about it. And don't feel like, oh, gee, I've got 48 slides here, and I've only gone through 15 now. I've got 2 minutes left, so I should go through each slide real fast." No, 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 no. Best to just end on that final slide you've got, wrap it up professionally, and go from there. At least I think.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right, Terry. That's another reason why you never ever have numbers on slides ever. And you see corporate presentations with numbers in the bottom right-hand corner. Never ever have numbers on slides. First point. Second point, it's another reason for not using bullet points. If I put up a bullet point list, then and just say there's 5 points on that list, I've kind of pre-advertised an agenda of what I'm going to talk about on that list if everybody sees those 5 points in advance, and I'm kind of nailed my colors to the mast. And if I get through to the 4th or 5th point and I genuinely can't remember what the last point was, I'm stuck, because they all know that there's those 5 points on the slide and I have to speak to it. But if those points aren't there, nobody knows what I'm going to say. So you're right, nobody knows your script. So that's another good reason not for using bullet points.
Yeah, very important point. Matter of fact, those of you that are watching this, sometimes I'll just share this in doing my presentations. I usually start with maybe this many slides, however many that is. I might have 100 or so for an hour and a half presentation. What happens is sometimes things will get changed. There'll be someone that goes over before me, or they have to cut my speech down. Instead of this long, it's going to be this long. And well, I still have the 100 slides I prepared, so what do we do? Or people will ask questions, and sometimes I'm in an environment where the questions are extraordinarily important, and people who are in the audience are getting a lot out of that. Well, then what happens is it's coming up to, say, the top of the hour, and that's when I'm supposed to stop because they've got a hard cut. They have to go to lunch, or there was another thing that's coming up. For me to say, well, no, I've got these other 35 slides that I've prepared and I must show you, would be unprofessional. Instead, close the presentation on slide number 15, if that's where we are, and do it professionally, do it well, so they feel like, wow, this was great. Because the ultimate is not that I got through my slides. The ultimate is that people saw that and they really enjoyed it and they said, yes, this is very good. And so we want to do that. But yet when things go wrong, be able to adapt to it. Like, for instance, one of the things right now I'm noticing, for whatever reason, Gina is not with us right now. But Gina, we definitely want you with us, and we don't know why you're not there. But since you and I are in the same building, if you wanted to come over and say, oh, there you are. Okay, so you're there right now. Is everything okay? Any comments?
I'm here. Just while you guys were having such a great discussion, I wanted to be myself so that I wasn't distracting you or disturbing you, because you know how Google Hangouts work. If somebody's still over here making noise, and I'm going to be the face that's showing, and you guys are going to be doing the talking. So I'm here.
That's very good. As a matter of fact, Gina, thank you for doing that, because that's very important. One of the things we're doing is we're not only talking about this, but we're also communicating so that those of you watching can kind of read between the lines. And so what I want to do is, Gina, turn it over to you. We did get some comments of people saying that you were not framed as well on the screen. You might want to pull your laptop a little bit farther forward. There we go, looking a little bit better. And if there's any way to get a little extra light on you from where you are, would be good. But we're interested in any comments that you might have. Gina, make sure you're framed up. You do have quite a bit of headroom there right now, so make sure that's framed up properly. But be interested in any of the comments that you might have or reactions to what we've discussed so far.
Yes, well, yeah, it's getting dark soon out here, and it's a little more cloudy than it was earlier. So my lighting was great earlier, but it's getting dark. So that's one of the reasons that the lighting's bad right now. You know, I like the points. I'm a little bit confused by the you know, don't use bullet points. It is the first that I've heard that recommended. So I'm kind of fascinated by that point and intrigued to hear more what Chris has to say about that.
Chris, so what would your thoughts be on that?
Well, the thoughts are that the research is pretty clear that what the brain cannot do is read words and try and decode them at the same time as listen to words and try and decode them. That's what it can't do. And so if you think about it, the skill of being a TV news anchor or a radio news anchor, but it's worse on TV when people are seeing you and you're having to speak to people while the producer is sending a separate signal of words into your ear and telling you how many seconds you've got to go to the next link and what have you. I mean, that's a very, very, very skilled job, and it takes a huge amount of practice to get that going. And so for the average audience to be able to read words on a screen and at the same time use the same part of their brain to decode words that are coming into their ears is just not possible. The messages are mixed and scrambled, and it just doesn't get processed.
Yep, that makes sense. That's neurologically sound, and from a presentation point of view, very important. Chris, we do have a question that came in here from Andrew. I want to have you address this. He asked, how do you bring up the message, that's in quotes there, as one slide or what? Andrew wanted to know about that. What do you mean by bring up the message?
Okay, this is really a terrific question, Andrew. So, first thing to do when you think about building a presentation, the first thing to do is not to open PowerPoint. The first thing to do is to pick up a piece of paper and a pencil and understand what the message is. By that, what I mean is, what is it that you want the audience to leave with? So there are three essential questions. Number one, what do we want the audience to know that they didn't know beforehand? At the end of this presentation, what do we want the audience to know that they didn't know beforehand? Second question, what do we want them to do with that information? Third question, how do we want them to feel? Absolutely basic, essential questions. We must have answers to those three questions before you even open PowerPoint. What do we want them to know that they didn't know beforehand? What do we want them to do with that information? How do we want them to feel? And the answer to those questions is essentially the message, Andrew. And then what you would do is you would build a set of slides that built that message up. And in fact, in creating the presentation, you would have a structure that repeated that message several times throughout the presentation, because that's one of the ways of getting a message into long-term memory is repetition. So you'd introduce the message fairly early on, then you'd come back to it later, then you come back to it later, then you come back to it later, then you come back to it later until you get to the end.
So that repetition, which is very important, repetition is the mother of learning, as they would say in Russian. Повторение мать учения. Make sure that you're repeating it over and over. And we also have another question came in here from Libby Easton. Hi, Libby. Glad to have you with us there back in Florida. Hope you're having a great day there. Libby asked the question, bullets or points of wisdom work if there are a limited number of them, like 3. And she asked, what is the most important thing you want to be remembered and repeated? Chris, what would be your thoughts on that?
Well, Libby, is absolutely right that there are two numbers that are critically important in presentations. The number 3, as you will know, Terry, is one of them, the rule of 3. 3 keeps coming up again and again and again in presentations. And the other number is 5. 3 and 5 are good numbers in presentations. So if you want to get messages across to people, having 3 key messages is good, having 5 key messages is good, having more than that, and you have to have a very good structure if you want people to take on board more than 5 things, more than 5 messages. So for example, I've sat through a couple of presentations where chief executives have been introducing their 10 top strategic initiatives, and in the coffee break afterwards, nobody could tell me even what 2 of those strategic initiatives were. Just not remembered.
Makes sense. We're trying to do too much on there, and we can't remember it all. And because we know the way the brain works, and neurologically, the science is showing us what it does. It's one of the things. We have a comment here, a question from Betty. Said, I love the use of brain-based research in development of impactful presentations. Betty, I do too. Great
Absolutely.
Information to do that. And she said, Chris, can you provide us with some resources for further study?
Yes. Excuse me. The answer is yes, I can. Now, what's the best way to do that, Terry? Because I don't have that information right to hand right now. But I guess that we could we email that out to the people who are in joining us today? Would that be a way to do it?
Yeah, we can do that. Why don't we do this? For those of you that have questions, Chris, I don't think you would mind if we made your email address and the way they can contact you available. And you have some information I know I want to talk about in just a moment here that's available for them. If someone says, gee, I want to get in touch with Chris, we want to find out more information, how they do it, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, the best way is, and that would be in the lower third graphic, of course, if the lower third graphic were working today, but there we go. So that would be through my company, Active Presence, presence as in being there, and the website is activepresence.com. And if you go to activepresence.com, info@activepresence.com will reach me. If you go to the activepresence.com website as well, that's the way to get through to me, activepresence.com.
Very good. One of the things I'm doing, those of you that are watching this and catching it now, I put that into the chat room, so you can take that and copy it. It's activepresence.com or info, I-N-F-O, at activepresence, PRESENCE.com,
Yep.
activepresence.com. And Chris, they can reach you that way. And I know also what I want to do is, before people get away, there's so much information you've got. We've got a lot more we're going to cover and some questions coming through here. I want to bring in something that you have available on designing presentations you've put together for this, so that we can take a look at that and be able to see what's available on there. There's a Get Designing Presentations That Sell. Designing presentations that sell. You've got some information on that. People that are watching this, you can click on that right now. Chris, tell us a little bit about that and what's contained within that package.
Yeah, so Designing Presentations That Sell is an online learning course that we put together, and it came really out of when we were doing programs with companies in helping them produce better presentations, and in terms of working with their sales force and what have you, and their people in marketing, and helping them present better, we kept coming up against the same kind of problems again and again and again, in terms of people not having really a good grasp of PowerPoint as a tool. And so once they understood some of the power that was inherent within the product, they could produce much better supporting material, which gave them the confidence to be better presenters. So we put together this online course called Designing Presentations That Sell, which is a course basically on driving PowerPoint better. It's in 4 modules, and it teaches how to use PowerPoint animation transitions, how to work with smart art, how to produce good graphs, good-looking graphs in PowerPoint. In other words, all the sort of stuff that you would want to do if you were in business. You know, if you're a business person, you want to know how to use PowerPoint better for business purposes rather than just as a creative tool, as it were, then that's really what designing presentations that sell is all about. And there's a couple of ways in which you can get hold of that program. You can get hold of the course as an online program. You can get hold of the course as an online program and then have an hour's coaching on the phone with me in addition to that. And the information that you're putting forward there, Terry, for folks to have a look at, just for today, we've set up a couple of special discount coupons so folks can go and get themselves a screaming bargain, and I'm happy to do that for people that know you, Terry, so that's not a problem.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. And those of you that are watching this, I would encourage you to look into that. Chris is a person that has a sterling reputation in the UK and worldwide, and what he's doing on designing presentations, it's worth looking into it. Get in touch with him, find out about that and what he can do. And again, we'll go to info@activepresence.com, info@activepresence.com, and we'll be able to do it. We'll be talking more about that later on also. But remember, we do have the chat going today, and we want to make sure that we get your ideas on what's there and what can be done. As a matter of fact, several have come through here. I'm looking at, let's see, for different things that are available. I see Brian has a question here. I like the 5 points aspect. I normally start my talk PowerPoint with a slide titled "Today" and list 5 things we plan to cover. You're saying not to do so. Explain a little bit there to Brian what you're talking about with that, about the list of the 5 things to cover. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, okay, so this is a good point, Brian. Often the agenda or something like an agenda is the point where people start, and you're right to say that I always recommend not to do that, and people feel that is somehow counterintuitive and what have you, and so here's the reason. The reasoning is that the overall structure of a presentation is that you need something that awakens people's interest. And that should be the primary purpose of the presenter, should be to awaken interest first, and then you get permission from the audience to go into the material that you have prepared for that meeting, for that discussion, whatever. But to begin with, awaken people's interest, and that should be something that is about 180 words, there or thereabouts. It's about 1.5 minutes long. It's not a huge big spiel. So it's something that is relatively easy to script and therefore remember. So you should just be able to stand up and deliver this really engaging, interesting beginning, which has some relevance to your topic, and that will engage the audience, and they unwillingly then, unconsciously, I beg your pardon, not unwillingly, they willingly, unconsciously grant you permission to carry on speaking to them.
Yeah,
so
it makes sense.
That's the reasoning.
Very good points. Very good points. We have another question that came in from Barbara. What's the idea of the perfect close to a presentation?
Great. Oh, thank you, Barbara, for asking me this. These are terrific questions, Terry. Again, now, this is a really important one, Barbara, because so many people get this wrong. Here's what classically happens. People come to an end, and then they say, are there any questions? You know, and they open it up for a Q&A after the end. That's about the worst thing you can do. And yet I see it time and time again. It's the standard corporate way of doing things. Here's the problem with it. Go back to the 3 questions. The 3 questions were, what do we want these people to know? What do we want them to do with that new knowledge? How do we want them to feel? So at the end of that presentation, I want to check that you know what it is that I've told you, that you are going to take the action that I want you to take, and that you feel how I want you to feel. And then, guess what? The show's over. That's it. So the Q&A has to happen before that. And so within the context of the overall presentation, if it's, say, 30 minutes long, at round about 22 minutes, 23 minutes, you're going to say, And so, ladies and gentlemen, I do have some concluding remarks, but now would be a good time to handle questions if there are any. You'll deal with your Q&A, and you'll then say, and so in conclusion. And once you say the words, and so in conclusion, you've got about 35 seconds before the brain switches off and people start thinking about the shopping list, who's going to pick the children up from school tonight, where are they going on holiday, and all those things that are far more important than your presentation. And in those 35 seconds, you want to close with making sure that they've got the key messages, they know what the actions are, and that they are as excited or as committed or whatever the feeling is that you want to have that audience with, and then that's it. Close off.
Very good. I think that's important to be able to close and then not just dribble it out there. Very important. You know, another thing I want to share about working in presentations that I do, matter of fact, because Chris, it's relevant on my mind right now. I just wrote my column for, as you know, for business journals. And this week I wrote the one that will be in next week. So those of you who are watching this, you're getting a sneak peek of what it's going to be, where I talk about presentations and the importance of making sure that you do your research. I have 3 important points. You know, 3 points for it. Well, one of the 3 is doing research. And particularly since we're here in the UK right now, Gina and I are here and getting a chance to join Chris on this and the presentations that we've done. I find it's important to do your research because what will work in some countries does not necessarily work in others. And this is very important to test and to understand. What will work sometimes with references to people, references to certain areas, might not work in others. And so I find there's 2 forms of research you want to do. Yes, of course, we think now Google. You want to do that, go out there and do the Google research. But I think a valuable source of research that a lot of people don't do is talking to audience members. Go out there and actually talk to them. Find out what you like or what do you think about this. I was doing a program just a couple of days ago over in Disneyland in California. And the group was from Australia. They were salespeople that had succeeded and achieved certain goals, and the company had brought them over to Disneyland in the United States. All of them from Australia coming over, and I saw some material that I thought would be particularly good. So I know the meeting planner very well, know him very well. I asked him to take a look at what I was going to cover, and I said, "Is this okay?" Because it was a little bit edgy, a little bit, some might say over the top, and for some groups it would be, but I thought it could be appropriate. He looked at it, laughed, gave me a pat on the back, said, "Terry, that'll be perfect for our group." And so I went through, did it, they loved it. It was a huge laugh. They thought it was great, and that particular group liked this particular topic. Others might not. And so my point on that is make sure you do your research. Research what that group will like and what is there. Gina brought up a point beforehand I thought that was very good and helped me on my article, she does a lot on that, is now get involved with their Facebook groups. Get involved in their LinkedIn groups if you can. Kind of slide in there and become part of the organization, monitoring what they're doing. Chris, what do you think about what I just mentioned there, those ways to research?
100% behind you, and I you know, if we could bring Gina back in on this particular point, 'cause, you know, she is the master and mistress of all of this. I mean, I think that would be great because this whole idea of reconnecting with the audience in advance of the event, I think, is absolutely critical, and every way that we can do that is great. I know that from my own experience that running surveys and questionnaires beforehand with an audience, boy oh boy, does that give you some valuable stuff to talk about. It really does. So yeah. anything that we can do there is, I think, would be great. I don't know if Gina is still with us and can come online and give us her views on there. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I think she is. Gina, what are your thoughts on that, about doing online research or other areas too?
Well, I think that's one of the most important things you can do as a speaker before the event is to plug into the community that you're going to speak to. And you can do that by using Twitter hashtags. You can use hashtags on Twitter. You can plug into the hashtags using Facebook. Or I really like hashtags for Twitter and Google Plus to get into the communities. If they already have a group that they'll let you join on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Google+, that's a great place to get in there, see who's talking, see who the leaders are, and if they don't already have one, start one. I've done that for a lot of people. I've offered to start a specific group for that event, and it can be public or secret or whatever the settings are that you want it to be, but it's a really wonderful way for people to interact in advance and you to get a good feeling about the group and what the dynamics are and what their concerns are.
Yes, very important point. I think Gina does that regularly. And by the way, I got to tell those of you that are watching know that and Gina's actually my secret weapon that I'm able to use, and she helps me enormously. I greatly appreciate what she's doing and giving me ideas when we're doing research and we're looking at different options. It's kind of nice to have an engineer there. And as I joke with her that even though I went to Georgia State, where she's from Georgia, she didn't go to Georgia State for her MBA. She had to settle for that little school up there in Cambridge named Harvard, where she got her MBA. So, but not everyone can get into Georgia State, but I still love her immensely. I'm glad she's joined us. Gina, thank you very much for your input on that, and I think it will be good. And by the way, Gina, if someone wants to reach you afterwards, I know you do a lot of help with people. You've worked with people who are writing books. People are doing marketing. You go in-depth and do an in-depth audit. You'll also work at books, helping people on that. How can they get in touch with you if they want to find out more information on that?
Well, you can connect through my website at ginacarr.com, as well as through email, gina@ginacarr.com.
Okay, very good. Excellent. And let's see, we had another question that came in here. Let's see from Solomon, and I think you're joining us over from Jordan today. So good to have you here with us on there, over in Jordan in the Middle East. Do you recommend to assign part of the presentation for questions from the attendees? Chris, I'll let you handle that. Suleiman is asking, do you recommend to assign part of the presentation for questions from the attendees?
Yes, is the short answer, and I do it in two ways. Firstly, it depends partly on the size of the audience, okay? Let's assume, let's say for most business meetings, we might have 20, 30 people in a presentation, maybe upwards of 40. Fine. If we're into hundreds and thousands, then it's a different gig. But for audiences that are a comfortable size, then I would say that certainly you can have the audience check in with you to clarify understanding as they go along, but I would also, I'd invite them freely to do that because you want to keep people engaged, but I would also let them know that there will be a time for them to ask questions, and I would have that time, as I was saying before, built into the presentation towards the end, but before you do the grand close.
Very good points. All right. And we had another question come in here from Brian. Brian, hey, good to see you. I think you're out there in Orange County, California, and glad to have you with us. He has an idea. He says he often pre-surveys the group. He puts pre in quotes there, pre-survey the group with 5 questions from Zoomerang survey. The idea of getting ideas from the audience beforehand. To me, that sounds like a great idea, and I would think, Brian, that is a wonderful way to really find out what's on their mind, etc. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Brian. Double thumbs up on that. I think that's a terrific idea. Anything that gets more information out of the group in advance helps you, and by the way, predisposes them to be more engaged with you on stage, as it were, because you've started the whole engagement process in advance. So that's just a terrific idea.
Yeah, I think, as a matter of fact, it's one of the things we're seeing now with technology, that we can find out really what audiences want both before, during, and after the presentation. Things have changed, and technology, when used the right way, can really help us to get a lot more information from the audience to the audience and make it a much more enriched and meaningful experience. One of the tools I'm looking at right now, and just share with you, I haven't used it, but I've heard many good things about it and I want to look into it, is called Kiwi, just like in New Zealand, the Kiwi, K-I-W-I, and it gives you the ability to send direct email and mail from the audience during the presentation, that people can send questions via an email to you, and it correlates it very easily, and also gives the ability to do the surveys a little bit more than just text. It's giving you the ability to, in a way that's meaningful, understand what's going on. And so there's a lot of technologies out there now that are emerging that allow the audience to interact with the presenter. Handled properly and done professionally, I think these are things that presenters want to look into, because someone might be in the audience and have a question about, oh, something's going on, or I got a question about that. They want to remain anonymous. And if they do, that could be a really useful question, but we want it handled in the right way. And having someone filter that, I think, can be very good information. Another thing I want to mention about the technology, we had a person, I'm not going to mention whose name it was, but a person who came on and sent me a private message here saying that that person was not able to join us, something went wrong with the calendar and things, and this is an advantage of using what we've got. This, of course, will be recorded and is going to be available for you for unlimited viewing on YouTube. And I think that's just one of the advantages that are available. Those of you that are joining us from different parts of the world, I mentioned Colette up in Canada. I know in the group that you're working with, having these kind of recorded training messages make it particularly good for your group, knowing the dynamics of what they're doing. So people can not only see what's going on right now and give questions, as we're doing right now, getting those kind of information, getting the ideas and the question that people say, hey, what about this or what about that? But also afterwards, they can see the recording of it. I think it has some amazing benefits for that. Chris, any ideas or concepts that you have on some of the technologies that are being used today to really enhance and help presentations be even better?
Yeah, I'll go for keeping the engagement going after the presentation, Terry, because we haven't really touched on that yet, have we? We've talked about beforehand, we've talked about during. Let's look at afterwards, because at the end of the day, a lot of presentations and a lot of business meetings are really about getting some form of change. At the end of the day, they are about initiating or keeping going some form of change program. And change doesn't happen in one 30-minute presentation. We know that. So yeah. starting the process in advance, we know is a great idea. We've got the presentation that initiates everything. Keeping that engagement going afterwards is crucial, and this is where I think my personal view is that in the past maybe couple of years, the whole online learning environment, all of those different technologies in the online learning space have really come of age, and I think that we're going to see tremendous tremendous advances very, very quickly from now onwards.
Yeah,
that's my view.
Very important. Thanks for your comments on that. And we had a question come through from Carol. Hi, Carol. Nice to see you. I know she's up maybe about 3 hours north of us here in England. One of the whizzes on technology, the how-to girl. And Carol, you'd asked about what mic I'm using. Right now, I'm using an over-the-ear microphone right here. Normally, I use a nice big Yeti microphone that I have from Blue Microphones, but I have that back home, and rather than bring it all the way over with all the weight on luggage, I'm using this, and it seems to be coming through just fine. Matter of fact, those of you that are here, you can let me know, how does the mic sound? How is the audio coming through? We tested it before, and it seemed to be pretty good, and we want to make sure it's all right there. And so, Carol, thanks for that. And Colette, glad that helped you out. Absolutely glad that'll help you. And we have a question from Marvin. Chris, Marvin wants to know, tell us where and how many photos you recommend.
Where, within the context of a presentation, where and how many photos?
Within the context of that presentation, how many photos? Marvin wanted to know about that. Marvin, if you want to follow up with that in a little bit more detail, that's okay as well. But Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, we'll answer that question within the context of images in general. So images could be diagrams, they could be photographs, they could be diagrams. And I think that the most important point is that whatever the image is, it has to synchronize with what the presenter is talking about. This is the critical point. And often you'll hear people come up with the idea that, oh yes, if I put a photograph in or I put an image in, it'll help people remember things. And so they'll put an image into their presentation. And the image isn't really directly connected to the point that the speaker is making. It's a little bit tangential because they couldn't quite get exactly the right image. And at that point, the connection is lost, and to be honest, the image isn't working. So I'd make the following point about photographs. If they are absolutely bang on and they are totally relevant, then you can you can really use as many as you like, but they have to be really spot on in terms of their relevance. Point number two, if they are really good, they really are spot on, then make them full size. Don't have them sitting in the middle of some corporate branded logo or whatever. Let them take over the entire screen. Don't bother with putting titles on the screen. Don't bother with company logos over the top of them, all that kind of stuff. If the photograph is that good, then it can stand alone and take over the entire screen.
Yes. Very important. Well, Chris, you have some very good points on that. And we got a few other questions and comments that came through here. We definitely want to get involved with those as well. If you have some questions, be sure and let us know that. But, Chris, we're not going to let you get away without knowing a little bit more about ways that people can really improve their skills. People have presentations coming up all the time right now, and they're looking at these in business. You have designed a program that people have used and have really enhanced their presentations called Designing Presentations That Sell. We've got that on our screen right now. For those of you that are joining us, you can see that. And Chris, we're not going to let you get away without telling us a little bit more about that, of how people can access that and get involved with that.
Okay, well, Designing Presentations That Sell, you can get at through the activepresence.com website. I think Terry is broadcasting the link for that and what have you now. So Designing Presentations That Sell is an online program. It's online learning. And you have two options, really. You can go through the program as it is, or you can go through the program and then spend an hour with me on the phone. That come down to those two options. The program itself consists of 4 modules, videos, download files, download PDF guides, and what have you. And they will help you drive PowerPoint in a much better way that is consistent with producing a presentation that actually sells. And the reason behind us producing this course came from all the work that we were doing with clients in helping them produce better materials to support their salespeople. And we found time and time again that really people didn't understand the power that was contained within PowerPoint. It is a very good business graphics package, but the average user of PowerPoint is really just scratching the surface in the same way that they're scratching the surface of Microsoft Word, in the same way that they're scratching the surface of Microsoft Excel. And so Designing Presentations That Sells gives you some of the an insight into the additional materials behind PowerPoint transitions, animations, PowerPoint smart art, and inserting graphics and making graphics look good and what have you. And all the exercises that you're shown in the videos, you get to download the actual files that we used when we created the learning videos. So if you like, you get to watch the videos and watch us create the material, and then you get to download the files that we use to make the videos, so you have those files available to you on your own computer if you need to do any of that material again later on.
Very good. And of course, if you want to get more information on this, and this would be a great investment, think about it. This is your career. This is you talking to others. Take a few coins, get this, and you'll be able to present yourself more effectively, sell more, and be able to get a lot more. So I encourage you to look into that and see what's available, what is available. And of course, that's at activepresence.com. If you're listening to this on audio and you're thinking, okay, that sounds good, I want to get that, you can go over to Active Presence, that's Presence, presence.com, activepresence.com, and get some information in there. And Marvin got your answer there. Great, glad that helped for you. Marvin liked it. And let's see, Colette is asking, Chris, when you present, do you just have the PowerPoint in view, or do you have the PowerPoint in view as well as a video pod of you presenting? Do you have those? I think that's an important point on the technology side, really important. Chris, what do you do when you're doing that?
Are we talking about presenting online there, Terry? Or
yes, you've been talking about presenting online. Of when you present, do you have your picture there as well, as well as what's available with the PowerPoint?
Okay, so that's a kind of PIP, picture in picture, as it were. I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I have absolutely no objection to PIP. I think that's great. In fact, I've used PIP in one of the videos that my colleague has just been editing on the other side of the office, actually, and that'll be coming up in one of our new websites that's going online later this week. So nothing wrong with PIP. The most crucial point, I'll just come back to it. This is the crucial point in all presentations. It doesn't matter whether you're live on stage or whether you're doing it online, is that it is absolutely crucial that what the presenter says is synchronized with what the audience sees. This concept of synchronicity and integration between the audio signal, what the presenter is saying, and the visual signal, the slides, get these two really tightly synced, and that is an absolutely crucial aspect to driving a message into long-term memory.
Yeah, very, very important. Well, Chris, you have given us so much information. It's just wonderful every time we get a chance to get together with you and get a chance to talk, and we appreciate you taking time here to help us and be with us on that. We have one other message coming through from Natalia. Hello, Natalia. Здравствуйте. Hope you're doing well. Are there any other programs besides PowerPoint you would recommend for designing a great presentation? I have some strong feelings on that myself, but Chris, I'd love to hear from you first. Programs other than PowerPoint, besides or in addition to, for designing a great presentation.
Keynote, fine. Prezi, fine. I'm fairly agnostic in a way when it comes to technology. I really don't mind. The reason why I talk about PowerPoint is simply that, you know, the overwhelming majority of my clients use PowerPoint. If the overwhelming majority of my clients tomorrow decided they were all going to use Prezi for the sake of argument, then I would be talking about Prezi. I don't really mind what the technology is. The key point is how it is used by the presenter.
Yeah, I think that's important. For me, Keynote is the one that I use because it's me, and I don't do as much on the training on that. But Chris, I think your answer is correct. You're addressing what the market says, and where the market is, that's where we need to be. And the key is using those principles that you talk about can really help you in making those presentations. Well, on behalf of Chris Davidson and Gina Carr, Gina, are you still there with us? Right now, I think you had some other activities that came up and had to address, but we appreciate you being here. And for those of you joining us, thank you so much. Both those of you doing this live, there, and Gina's there. Gina, any final words you want to add?
No, just I learned a lot. It was very good, and I'd love to. I'm going to plug more into Chris's information and learn how to do better presentations.
Sounds good. Gina, always great to have you here with us. And for those of you joining us on recording or live, knowing how to make presentations is one of the most important things that you can do, one of the most important skills that you can master in life, both for selling your products, your services, as well as now the very important area of doing it online and with technology, like we're doing today, using Google Plus Hangouts with an add-on, kind of a bolt-in there with a Webinar Jam. Using that, and that gives us the ability to have many of the things that are really good and help on that. We really appreciate your comments. Thank you very much for the kind of comments that you've had. And I'm Terry Brock. You can see how you can reach me. Their Twitter is @TerryBrock, and their website is www.terrybrock.com. And of course, Chris can be reached through activepresence.com. That's ACTIV, and presence is spelled PRESENCE. ActivePresence.com. And Gina Carr joining us, and she's of course at www.ginacarr.com. On behalf of everyone here, thank you very much for being with us today, and we will look forward to seeing you in the future.